Hi everyone, I want to thank you for joining me for another episode of Life Goes On. This is sponsored by CSEP, the Senior Community Service Employment Program, helping those 55 and older find meaningful training and employment opportunities. Today with me, my special guest is Marcus McLeod. Hello, thank you for coming.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
So you have a really interesting background that I want people to know about you first before we kind of get into things. You do all kinds of different oddball things. So you're with MediaCom.
Correct, yes.
You're also a nurse.
Yep.
And then today's topic is about sexual assault. So that's the main reason why you're here. So kind of tell me a little bit about yourself, especially the fact that you are from Wales, which is kind of a, kind of a special thing over here. We don't really see much of that. So how did you end up from Wales to here in Minnesota?
Essentially, I went through schooling and I decided I wanted to be closer to family, so my sister convinced me to come back over to the United States. She was currently going to Bemidji State University for her nursing, and she convinced me to come over, and I came over, and she joined the Navy and decided to leave me in Minnesota, and I've decided to stay because it's a beautiful area and everything like that.
You didn't feel like following her into the Navy?
No, I didn't currently have my citizenship at the time, so not legally allowed to, but...
But you followed her into nursing?
Yes, I did. I followed her into nursing and got my RN, and then I saw opportunity to be a part of it was the sexual assault program of Hibbing, Cass, and Hubbard counties. Now it's renamed as support within Reach.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I got my advocacy through them, and been doing it ever since.
Okay, so are you active as an RN right now?
Currently, no. I've focused more on my business aspect. I do volunteer work as well for nursing, and then also apply my nursing background just for everyday things. So.
Okay. So what about the MediaCom? How did you end up with MediaCom?
I currently I met my fiance who lived over here, so I needed to find a job in MediaCom, so I decided to move over here. And it seemed like a great fit. I got to utilize a lot of my aspects in nursing, dealing with different businesses within healthcare, as well as my business background before that.
Okay, how long have you been with them?
It's coming up on about a half year now.
Okay, so it's still kind of new.
Still fairly new, yeah. Still learning the area and everything.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the sexual assault. How did you briefly touch on that? How did you get into really becoming an advocate for sexual? What was your interest that brought you to that point?
Well, I had a few friends that were victims of sexual assault when I was going to college in the States here, and they always felt like they didn't have a voice. They weren't able to have their story told and get the justice that they deserved. So being able to find a program where you can advocate for those victims and help them tell their story and seek the justice that they deserve in that situation was a great opportunity for me to be able to help.
Okay, so it was your friends that kind of sparked you on that idea. So
Definitely.
I haven't met very many male advocates, so it's kind of cool to see that. And you have such a wide background, especially with your nursing in there, that probably really adds a lot to it and what you can really do. So talk about is it an agency? What would you call it, the program that you're with?
Well, it's a non-profit.
Okay.
Basically, they are stationed out of Bemidji and allocate funding for victims of sexual assault to be able to advocate for them in court, speak on their behalf, or even just get them counseling that they need for post-traumatic stress from the assault, or being able to just cope day to day. So it's definitely a great resource to be able to even just to talk to someone.
Okay. You said that they're based out of Bemidji, but do they have branches elsewhere?
They do have branches elsewhere. I'm not up on the names of them, but there's definitely statewide support systems in place. Currently working on trying to get involved with one in this area, just to kind of expand my reach to be able to help more people. But yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite part about being a sexual assault advocate?
The being able to help someone to the point that they're feel comfortable in their own skin again. They feel comfortable being able to talk about the situation and be able to recover from that. That's my favorite part about being an advocate, because it definitely seeing that recovery process from somebody who's completely torn off of the situation to the healing that comes about with it is great.
Okay. Could you give me a definition of what the word assault means when referring to sexual assault?
Generally, assault, it's pretty wide ranged in the context of sexual assault. It can be any unwarranted or unsolicited sexual touching, any unwarranted sexual comments, as in the example of like workplace harassment. It can be assault to a point if it gets escalated. So it's, like I said, it's a vague definition, but it does cover a wide range. Where someone may think it's just sexual harassment, it actually could be assault if it's a continuing problem.
Okay. So some people might realize that they're in a situation but aren't fully understanding everything that's going on. You just briefly touched about sexual harassment. What is harassment, and what is the comparison to assault?
Harassment is, best would be to, for an example, is sexual comments, or someone who is being harassed may be on a temporary basis where they feel uncomfortable. Assault on verbal terms is an ongoing, consistent program that is a detriment to their safety, as well as the obvious assault where there's physical abuse in a sexual manner. Where on harassment there really wouldn't be the physical abuse side of it.
Okay, so the assault is more the actual physical touchy-feely kind of a thing, and harassment could be more like the verbal, those kinds of things that are ongoing.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Do you, as an advocate, what areas do you just do in Bemidji, or do you try to work through all the counties that you are passing through in this area?
Well, how it generally works is if someone either walks in, they would speak with staff in the building, or there is a support line that you can talk to an advocate if there is an issue. We're on call in a circular pattern with throughout the advocates to respond to any sexual assaults that happen. Then basically the support is there for them in the capacity of phone calls or face-to-faces.
Okay. What, since this program is kind of focused to those 55 and older, what is the age group that you see most that you would say is definitely the highest rate for sexual assault or harassment?
Generally, the highest rate would be, the 18 to 24, but surprisingly, the second highest rate is that, that 46 to 58 range. Generally, this is the reason why this happens. It's spousal abuse that happens between husband and wife. That unwanted sexual, contact is happening. And unfortunately, with these older folks, they don't feel that it's something in their mind that they want to report. They either feel that it's not something that can happen to them, I'm too old for this, or, well, it's not going to help anyways. My view on it, any sexual assault or any sexual harassment is not warranted, and if there's ever a time that you need to be able to get that help, you should get that help. So.
Okay. that actually, you led right into my next question is, do you see a lot of more in that age group, like workplace harassment and sexual assault compared to, a relationship kind? So
Generally, with the statistics that we see, it's generally acquaintance. So somebody who's a friend or somebody, or like I said, a spouse that this happens to. But there is quite alarming rate that happens in the workplace. And again, it's the same situation as the spouse. You don't want to stir the pot at work. You feel like you're going to get retaliated against. And it just, a lot of the times, doesn't get reported. And people end up not getting the help that they need to be able to move beyond that.
with the work thing, I just had a question in mind for that. Isn't there some kind of like an actual legislation in place saying that if a person comes forth with any kind of sexual harassment reports or anything that they will be protected in the workplace?
Definitely. And the reason why a lot of people don't report is, like I said, the fear of that. And that comes from not knowing that they will be protected, not only in the workplace, but by police or different governing bodies. What you should always do when going to a workplace is read your policies. Make sure that you have all the tools to be able to be in a safe place, and who you need to talk to if this actually happens.
Okay, so I wanted to just let everybody know who might be just watching this show. This is Life Goes On, and I have Marcus McLeod from MediaCom here, who's also a sexual assault advocate, talking about the issue and how big of an issue it is in our area. So next question, compared to the rest of the states, do you know any statistics about this area from Bemidji over to the Beltline kind of area, that where we stand to the rest of the state compared to statistic-wise for sexual assault?
Unfortunately, we are quite high. I believe we're within the top 10 with states for sexual assaults and trafficking. As of late, there's been an alarming rate of people being taken from vulnerable situations and forced into prostitution or different sexual rings in different states. And that's what's contributing to the higher numbers of sexual assault in the state.
Okay, so we are pretty high up there. As an advocate, is there things that you see more frequently, certain issues that seem to be a pattern over and over?
The biggest pattern that I do see is that acquaintance sexual assault. To be more specific, basically unsolicited touching or groping that just escalates to the point of an assault case. And it's very unfortunate because it starts out as harassment, something that a lot of people blow off their shoulders, and then moves to this point of it being considered assault, and they're still trying to blow this off their shoulders, not thinking that they need help, which is very unfortunate.
Okay. Do you know anything about how like mental disabilities might pull into play, whether it's a victim or the person actually being the one doing the assault?
Generally, you do see a lot of post-traumatic stress in assault situations. The standard, not accepting what's going on and then reliving those situations. That tends to be a trend with assault victims. Now, as for disabilities for assaultees, it's not really a disability from what I've been seeing. It's more of an ignorance to what they're doing. A lot of as you probably know, a lot of people, they'll make like a sexual joke or something to that accord and not think of anything of it. Well, that's harassment right there. It's just becoming, unfortunately, a social norm to make these comments, and it's just escalating with some people to that point.
Okay. For someone who is, like, if someone does come in what kind of support do they get specifically in the program? Not just that there's a lot of different support options out there, but what kinds of support can someone who has been a victim in the past or a recent victim or feels that they are in that kind of a situation right now, what kind of support can they find with an advocacy?
One of the biggest things that a lot of people have told me is a safe space to talk. Being able to speak to someone about their problems without worry of recourse is definitely a big asset to somebody who's on the road to recovery, as well as the different options for help. We'll always be there as an ear. We'll always be there to help. Help facilitate your road to recovery.
What are you doing?
Different support monetarily as well.
Okay.
No, you have to wait for the credits to be done. I need closure here.
Like, I mean, there's restraining orders and stuff, but what happens to that person for as far as rehabilitation might go? Does advocacy groups work with those people to help with that?
Yes. Being an advocate, you advocate for that victim. We get in touch with these different agencies to help facilitate. Even if you need someone to make an appointment for you to see a psychologist, and you don't feel confident enough to do that, we'll help facilitate that. We're just, like I said, we're trying to help the road to recovery as much as possible. So.
Okay. Anything else? Any particular stories? Obviously, names left unsaid, kind of thing. That you can just give some examples that you see in this area. That if someone maybe has a close friend and they're kind of like, well, that kind of seems like it's a possibility, but could any particular examples that you have help people to realize that, yeah, I believe my friend is in trouble?
Yeah. One that really pointed out in my head, and I kind of referenced it when I was defining the progression from harassment to assault, was actually a friend of mine who I worked with back home. She basically, there was being snide comments, and then sexual comments made to her, and then eventually progressed to touching and turned into a stalking situation where she ended up being raped. What people need to realize that if this happens, you need to report it. If you don't feel comfortable going to your place of work, if you don't feel comfortable in your place of home, you need to report this and be able to feel comfortable in your living situation. No one's going to yell at you or be mad at you if you don't feel safe. And there is options out there for support.
Okay, do you know anything about like drug-induced? Like someone goes out, drinks too much, or possibly getting a rape pill. Do you know much about that as far as statistics in this area? Do you see a lot of that? Do you know?
It's generally with the younger crowds. As for roofies or anything like that, I don't know the statistics. Generally, roofies tend to leave the system fairly quickly, so it's very hard to peg. But the signs and symptoms are there. With going out, knowing if you are going out to have drinks, any consumption of alcohol, you legally can't make the decision for consent. So that's actually on the books with that. So just remember to keep yourself safe. If somebody's trying to push you into that sexual situation, that's borderline assault. That's harassment for sure. Go have fun. You don't need to have that on your shoulders of being harassed like that.
What about guilt levels in the victim? Someone who's been raped or sexually assaulted, do they other than feeling that nobody's going to listen to them or being, scrutinized for making reports, do you see a lot of issues with the guilt, that they think maybe it's because of me that this happened to me, I shouldn't have been in this situation, or I did drink something, so now it's my fault?
You generally see that in the first stages of recovery. This happened to me, this must have been my fault. All those is generally the first step, and that's why a lot of people avoid seeking help. If you have any doubt, that this was something that was consensual, or if you have any doubt that this is something that you, that you wanted, then it wasn't consensual. Consent is a very straightforward thing. You know that you want to consent. You know that you want these comments. So that's where all the guilt comes in. If people are doubting whether it is consensual, it wasn't consensual. And talking to someone definitely would help with that process.
Okay. Trying to remember, I just had a question really quick and it flipped right through my mind.
No worries.
But having to do with places to call, do you know of the best number to be able to call for people that are, feeling sexual assault? What number should they be looking for? How should they find that help?
Generally, like I said, I'm fairly new to the area. I don't know the programs around here. Generally, a simple call to the police station, they'll get you in touch with the people that you need to. Just ask, or any of the women's shelters as well. If there's any women's shelters in the area, they will definitely get you involved with the right people. You don't need to know the exact number to a certain facility. There's different outreach programs within every area within the state that will get you to the right people. And I do apologize for not having the numbers on hand for myself, for the audience here, but just know there is support and there's different facets to get that support.
Okay. I have one more question as
Sure.
we're getting ready to close this. With the victims that come in, do you see victims coming in that have been dealing with this for maybe 5-10 years? Or is it more victims who are more recent within like the last year?
It's kind of 50-50, honestly. You do see the people that it just happened to, but you got to realize the statute of limitations is, I believe it's 7 years on sexual assault. So you do see people coming in that have had past rapes or past sexual assaults happen to them that have just accepted, oh, this actually happened, and they're looking for help. So if this has ever happened to you, the worst that can happen is that you have somebody to talk to about it. No one's ever going to, like I said, yell at you or be mad at you if you come to them with these problems. So think about yourself in the situation. You need to be safe. You need to feel comfortable in your own skin.
So you can always come in, but if it's been in the last 7 years, a report can be made and something
Correct.
actually can be done about that report.
Correct, yes.
Any last closing comments that you would like to have for us?
Generally, I just would like to say you definitely want to be able to feel safe in your situation. So if you have any doubt, feel free to reach out to any of the sexual assault programs within the area, just to even talk. And if there is an issue that does come about, we can get you the help that you do need. Any unwanted sexual harassment or sexual assault is absolutely unacceptable. So be sure to keep yourselves safe.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. It's been very wonderful. You've had a load of information, and one little request before we leave.
Sure.
Say a wee little bit
A wee little bit.
All right, thank you again for
Thank
coming.
you.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. It was a pleasure.
Okay, I want to thank everybody again for watching Life Goes On. I've had Marcus McLeod on today from Wales.
No.
Yes. This has been a program brought to you by CSEP. I want to encourage everybody who's in that 55 and older range that is looking for help to go ahead and contact me to see if there's any opportunities in your area. Love to reach out and be able to help you. Thank you again.